Hey, welcome to Own the Future. I don't know the rest of the intro.
You're fired. You're fired. Welcome to Own the Future, a podcast made for and by changemakers, where we gain the freedom to own. Oh, I don't even know it.
Ooh.
Welcome to Own the Future, a podcast made for and by changemakers, where we gain the courage to own our story, the freedom to own our
the
craft,
future.
And the power to own the future. I am your guest, Lucas Scrobot, and today your host is...
It's Abdullah, you guys.
Hey.
It's Abdullah. So I guess we'll explain what we're doing.
Explain this episode, because it's probably going to need some explaining.
Okay, so just to back up to how this came to be, I was asking a lot of questions on Instagram about the things that you're doing with Own the Future and Weaver and Loom.
Mm-hmm.
And I also mentioned that the possibility I'll be passing by Dubai. And you're like, how about you come and we talk about it at the studio?
Yep. And I said, you can interview me on my show.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, you want me to interview you on your own show?
I thought it was a fun idea.
I thought it was a really exciting idea. And it's a way for the audience to hear you speak in a way that maybe they haven't heard you speak before.
That's because they haven't been listening to my daily Sunday through Thursday episodes on Weaver and Loom.
But that's a whole different thing, right? I mean,
yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah, that's you sharing bits of your knowledge and wisdom and stuff that you've accumulated through time and through
but there's not someone pulling questions out of me.
No, I mean, I'm not sure how many of your regular listeners, for example, know what you do for a living.
Yeah.
Like, we can start with that. What do you do aside from a podcast?
I help people and brands find and communicate their purpose, right? So when I'm working with a brand, I'm going in and we're saying, what's your why? What do you do? Who do you serve? How do you do it? And then how are you going to communicate that to your audience, to your clients, to the demographic that you're seeking to hit in a way that is meaningful to them, rather than in a way that's egocentric and meaningful to you? And how are you doing it in a way that's causing people to identify with a tribe? People like us do things like this, rather than just kind of trying to push your messaging on them, but inviting them into a greater storyline. So that's what I do. I help brands communicate both internally the culture of their company, which then overflows to external brand identity communication messaging.
Do you do that independently, or
I call it bootstrapping.
What does that mean?
So bootstrapping is where you're doing it quote unquote independently, but you're working with a broad team where you're bringing in other areas of expertise.
Okay. All right. I just want to get into this main question that I've been wanting to ask. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you do it, man? You're on Instagram every single day. You're putting out 5 episodes per week. That's a daily show. Sunday
through
Thursday, every day. For people who don't know, 4 sons,
4 boys
from
the age of, at this point, 6 to 7 weeks.
6 to
6
7
years
weeks.
old to 7 weeks. Yeah.
You're in episode 100 and
this is episode 109.
109.
It's episode 109. And then I've been doing solo 5 days a week for the last probably 12 weeks now. I started at 40 was my first that I started doing every day. And so from 40 to 109, 5 days a week.
So a good place to start would be, how did you come to that decision? Because that's a commitment. That's a massive commitment.
It's a massive commitment. Part of it comes, there's probably multiple things that brought me to the decision of, okay, I'm going to do daily solo 7 to 12 minute episodes. Multiple things. So one, Ira Glass talks about it. Derek Sivers talks about it.
Ira Glass talks about it?
He talks about doing a volume of work. When your work isn't as good as you want it to be, where your taste is great. Right. You're like, I know what I wanted. I know what this should be like. It's not quite there.
I know that interview.
And your craft isn't matching. You have the way to get through the dip, as Seth Godin would say, is you need to do a volume of work. You need to put in the reps, whether it's on a daily or a weekly basis, to have the ability where you're shipping and you're putting it out to an audience so that you are refining your craft, whatever it's painting, whether it's songwriting, it's going through the reps. And as you put in those reps, you're going to grow and develop as a writer, as a communicator, as a songwriter, whatever it might be.
Okay.
So that was one of the many aspects.
All right. Was it a gradual decision, or was it, when was that day you said, today I'll start, today I'll put out every single episode for the next God knows how long?
God knows how long.
Yeah.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
It probably, it was a little bit of a gradual decision in that I'm like, okay, I love when I come off an interview, I feel exhilarated. I feel when I'm in an interview, even now, when I'm being interviewed, I feel like I'm in that place of purpose where I feel that I don't have a better word than that anointing, where it's like, this is what I was made for. Like, this
Mhm.
is what brings me joy. And I get that when I'm writing, right? It's that place of creating. And so I was at a point where, like, okay, I'm interviewing people. Sometimes it's like, well, there's a lot that you have to deal with when you're doing interviews, which is part of the reasons that I have this setup right now is that, okay, scheduling. What's the quality of the person that you're interviewing, the research, and then, all these components to come together to do one interview. And I
Mhm.
was at a place where, like, well, I want to be able to also put my thoughts and my voice out into the world. I can't do that when I'm interviewing you,
Right.
right? I'm not going to hijack and some people do, I guess. Some people hijack the conversation and they become meme monsters when they're supposed to be
Right.
giving a platform to their guest.
Right.
So it's like, oh, well,
Well, in most cases, in some cases, you are very engaged in the conversation. The Khairabi
Yeah,
interview
yeah.
was amazing.
Yes.
It was
People
you.
always refer to that one, but
Yeah.
that's because she was amazing.
Mhm.
So that interview was amazing because the guest was amazing.
Mhm.
And when the guest is amazing and they are able to engage in a different way in the interview and in the conversation,
Right.
it takes two,
So
right?
it's also a matter of expectation, right? So I think a lot of people would come into this setup in the expectation that you're going to learn something about them. So they already set their mindset on, I'm going to
Totally.
give and not necessarily take, because they're there.
They're going to take and not necessarily give in
Or,
some ways, right? They're not going to give, they're not going to ask more questions. They're going to
right.
like just take the questions rather than
You're
try to,
looking at the other way around,
Yeah.
or give the answers rather.
rather than
Because
ask
it is
questions.
giving. They're giving parts of their history, parts of who they are, parts of themselves.
Yeah.
It is giving, but it's not necessarily. The expectation is, I'm going to come here to share a piece of my journey.
Totally.
Khairabi is a podcaster.
Right. So she's coming from a different
Right.
mindset.
So even though that might have been the expectation, but her being in this setup is her engaging in active conversation.
Yes.
So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
not a knock on anyone. I mean,
Yeah, because I was on
any that's been on. I mean, yeah. I mean, well, there was that one that's with that story tank guy. No. So yeah. So part of it is that expectation, and part of it is, like Khaira, like she does this and she knows what it takes to create an engaging conversation. So, and I've been in other episodes where there is kind of that back and forth, and it's not just a one-sided asking
Mhm.
questions.
So back to the point, you wanted a way to be able to talk, to be able to say what you have to say, right?
I wanted a way to be able to say what I have to say, and as you've pointed out multiple times in the pre-show hangout time,
Mhm.
the length of my podcasts, they're long.
Yeah.
It was a miracle last week with Zainab Aswali. It was like an hour long. That's probably the shortest episode of Own the Future that I have. Normally they go 2 hours. So I'm like, okay, well, sometimes people aren't interested to engage in a 2-hour podcast. I'm one of them, right? Sometimes I don't listen to a
Yeah.
2-hour podcast. So how can I put out potato chips every day? How can I put out short, crunchy thoughts
Right.
that are more shareable? And so I was also looking at, how can I get more at bats? How can I get more opportunities to hit people for that 7 to 12 minutes and drip, 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 drip over however long I need to drip for,
Right.
in order to achieve my goals.
And that's where Weaver and Loom came from.
That's where Weaver and Loom came, which came from a dream. So I had a dream that was, teaching people to weave on this loom.
Did you mention this?
Oh, I don't think I've mentioned.
I don't think you mentioned
this. Own the Future came from a dream.
Really?
I had a dream where in the dream I had a podcast where I was, engaging with, I don't know, like third cultured Arabs, right? People like you, people who are.
This is while you were in the U.S.
No, this was. I was here. This was maybe like 2 years ago.
That's
maybe a
interesting.
year and a half, probably a year and a half ago now. And so I had a dream. From that dream, I'm like, oh, I'll try to do the dream. And then I had another dream with the Weaver and the Loom.
Is this a regular occurrence?
I love dreams.
And you take your. What do dreams mean to you? What do your dreams mean to you? It's fascinating.
Depends on the dream.
Because I have a lot of dreams and I never take it to mean anything substantial.
I mean, dreams can come from, pizza. Dreams can come from,
Let's not even go there, Luke.
Right? No, they can. You can have a dream and it's just a dream. It means it's your mind processing information. But then I think there's dreams that are, they bring guidance. There's dreams that bring warning. There's lots of different kinds of dreams.
You're right.
And each dream you have to have the wisdom and the ability to interpret that dream. And some dreams are like, oh, I wonder what that means. It means nothing.
I feel like there will be a way to come back to this, to the dream.
I'd love to circle around to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Back to your question. So I had a dream. I had vision of, okay, I have things that I want to share. I want to develop my own voice. I don't want to have to be always, because before with Own the Future, when I wasn't just doing the daily episodes, I was doing weekly, I would do some solo segments that were a little longer, probably 20 minutes.
I remember that, yeah.
And so it was taking that and saying, okay, well, how about I position that intentionally and say, okay, I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up and put myself on the hook for every day to get my thoughts, my voice out there, to begin to hone my thoughts, hone my ideas, hone my voice. And so part of it's like, well, because I know part of your question is like, well, you're putting in so much content, I can't listen to it all. I'm like, well, that's okay. It's not for you. I mean, it is. But if someone listens on Monday and then Wednesday and doesn't listen to the other 3, well, that's okay, because I'm not putting out one piece of content that I'm hoping that everyone listens to. I'm putting out an ecosystem of content that I want people to engage with.
Okay. Now, coming to the content, okay, I love the idea of, say, putting out, me, Abdullah, I want to put out content every single day. All right? Let's
you should.
Wait.
Because you're a gifted creator. You should.
But this is the difference, right? When it comes to the stuff that I do, it's very rarely me talking. In fact, whenever I do share my opinion or my thoughts on something, it's very calculated. I think I put a lot of thought on what I want to say and why do I want to say it. That's a different thing. What I want to ask you is, it's one thing to say I'm going to put out content every day. It's another thing to be able to actually do that. Where does this stuff come from on a regular day-to-day basis? What is the secret book that you're reading that you're pulling all of this stuff from? No, for real, like where?
It comes from life. It comes from personality, and it comes from putting myself on the hook and showing up when I don't feel like it. Amateurs show up without deadlines when they feel like it. Professionals show up when they don't feel like it and they set a deadline. And it's that act of committing that, right now, this is going to be, we're recording on Thursday. I don't have an episode for Sunday. This is Sunday's episode.
Okay.
I don't know what the podcast is going to say on Monday yet, but I'm on the hook. It's going to say something.
Oh, that's all well and good though, but like if I want to put myself on the hook and like I need to put out an episode, I don't have stuff to pull from. Like where like
So
I
new
do you
ideas come from old ideas that are combined, right? So when you take two old ideas and you whether take one old idea and put it in a new context or merge two old ideas together, you synthesize something out into a new idea.
you have a process.
Yeah, my process is, I have a whiteboard and I write and like, oh, here's this idea and oh, that connects to this idea. Oh wait, that idea is hierarchical to these other ideas and here's this other subpoint. Oh, I have a 9-part series. And so
Mhm.
I'll map out that 9-part series. Each one is one. I try to have one thought,
Okay.
one main point per episode.
Could you give me an example and walk me through it?
Which part?
One of the ideas of a series of
Yeah,
episodes.
so there's a few different series that I did. So I did one series on um, defend your walls.
Right.
Build your walls and defend your gates. So in the earlier series, I'm not a big fan of it, but I do think that I could refine it into a book. Um, but the whole idea was, okay, there's different spheres or areas of our life that we need to have defined and know what our principles are, know where our boundaries are, so that we're living a boundaried life,
Mhm.
so that we know what we want to bring in and what we need to keep out. So I identified, okay, here's off of ancient Mesopotamian cities, this is what used to happen at city gates, identified those 7 different ones.
You have a lot of stories as well. Do you go on Google and like
Well, yeah. So I'll, whether it's reading content, reading the news, stories from a long time ago.
mm,
So I did a series on, things that were impossible until they weren't.
mhm,
And talking about, okay, you and I, and everyone listening to this show, you are an agent of change in the world, and probably at some level, you want to achieve something that in some way seems impossible. And so I did a 5-part series on stories of people who did things that they were told, well, it's impossible. You're never going to do this. You're underfunded. You didn't come from this family. You didn't come from, fill in the blank. But they achieved something that was impossible and now it's possible and it changed the world. So I did a series on that. I just finished a series on, you know, from actually Sabrina. She's designing some logos,
yeah,
some
she told me.
stickers for me.
Yeah,
Super excited
I was very
for
jealous.
them. And yeah, super excited for
Yeah.
them. Multiple reasons. One's because she listens to the show, so I'm like, oh,
Mm,
this is epic. So she did an image that was this blacked out face with a stamp across it saying absolute nobody. Because I talk about,
mhm,
do you have the courage to become an absolute nobody? And so when I saw that, I felt like the spirit of that image or the energy of that image wasn't what I wanted it to communicate. It seemed a little bit too self-deprecating. It seemed a little bit too like, I'm a nobody, here I am. And it's not Sabrina's fault. That's just, so that's not anything against her. That's what the impression that I got from it. And I thought, interesting. I want to go back and I want to redefine and really unpack that singular idea of what does it mean to have the courage to live as an absolute nobody.
mhm,
So I took some time and I broke down, okay, what does it mean? Well, if you if you have the courage to be an absolute nobody, that means you actually are seeking to make a change in the world. You're actually searching for real greatness, true greatness,
mhm.
where you're not pandering to the opinions of others. So now I broke that down into a 9-part series where I'm talking about, okay, what does it mean to absolute nobody? What's greatness? Okay, how are you living from your identity, not searching for your identity? So many of us are acting because we're doing things to try to gain status symbols or identity or affirmation in the world. So I broke all of those components down bit by bit, just like you would in a book,
Mm,
chapter by chapter, one idea per chapter, one overall big idea from the book.
right. Which is something that I said to you earlier on when you started putting out
Yeah.
Weaver and Loom, that this feels like it could easily be a book.
Yeah.
And
And so,
yeah.
but if I didn't do that,
Mhm,
right. So now I actually, with that 9-part series, I'm like, I really should turn that into a book. And I have plans to go back, refine it, and turn it into a short manifesto. Less than 100 pages. Books that are full length, only 3% of people finish. I want to write a book that people finish because it's not just a vanity thing. I actually want to impact people. So I'm going to try to write a second book, less than 100 pages. That is going to be, well, what does it mean to be an absolute nobody? What does it mean to be a change maker? Because real change makers are absolute nobodies. And I talked about this in an episode that the greatest change maker in all the world are moms.
Yeah, I heard that one.
They're the greatest, they are the most powerful shaper of culture globally, hands down. Not the Illuminati, not the bank, not the big bad white man. It's the mothers.
Mm-hmm.
But notice, they are the most unseen, unrecognized, uncelebrated on a global level. The mom.
Right.
So, I would have not had the ability to articulate that if I wasn't putting out content, I wasn't forced to sit down and say, well, I'm writing. If it's bad, there's so many of my episodes out there that are bad, right?
Really?
There's so many bad, like the whole first series on the gates, and it's too thought driven. It's not story driven enough. And that's where I feel like I fall short. I'm not telling stories the way that I want to. Finding those stories, architecting those stories.
How do you feel your Weaver and Loom has evolved since the early episodes? It feels like ages ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
It's only 13 weeks ago, maybe now. Yeah, but
how has it evolved since then?
I think it's right now as we speak, I'm in the stage of really questioning, looking back and saying, okay, how can I refine? Because I don't feel like it has the teeth that I want. I'm in that same place as so many, probably of everyone, I mean, not everyone, but so many people who are listening to this, which is I know where my taste is and I know where my content is. And there's this massive gap. Right. So it's not enough just to put out content. You have to put it out and then you have to pause and look back and reflect and refine and refocus.
So what are the things that you found that you did before that you're doing better now? Or you're not?
Some of the things that I've done before that I really liked is series. Some of the things that I've done before that I like is telling stories, finding those stories and telling them. And I feel like that is harder for me to do because you have to find the story. And then it's research. How are you going to tell that in a compelling way that's meaningful? How are you connecting to people? Someone asked me the other day, he's like, well, are you being vulnerable enough? And it's really like, okay, you're right. I probably need to step up my vulnerability personally in these daily.
I feel like I've noticed that
episodes.
In a couple of your later ones. When you would say things like you or I should not or should do that, you would involve yourself. So it's less like, I am here. I figured all of this out.
I haven't figured anything out.
I know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Because I like the fact that you make it clear that this is something that I am also struggling through, which I've been hearing a lot of in your later episodes.
Yeah.
And this is what we should be working on together.
Yeah, and that's,
But how do you balance that? Because
that's a question.
Yeah, because that's on one hand, there is an element of vulnerability that you're human. Right. And the other hand, you are almost in a position of authority here, in a sense. I am coming to you to learn something and to gain knowledge. So how do you balance showing vulnerability versus showing that this is wisdom that I have to offer?
That's a really great question.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, because you don't want to be over vulnerable and self-deprecating, because then no one I don't want to listen to someone that's just whining about their life. Right.
Actually, some people love that.
God bless them.
No, like the podcast Millennial. Do you remember that? Did you ever listen to that?
No.
It's all about this girl in her mid-20s documenting what it's like graduating from college and trying to find just to build a life, a career, and it's literally just her documenting her day-to-day conversations, trying to figure her life out. And it's funny that you said whining because I listened to an interview of her. Her show got she stopped her show even
Mm.
though it was doing really well. She stopped it, and her reason was she started to feel that she was whining while when it started. Well,
Because it starts a ratchet. If
mhm,
you start to produce content that way, you're starting this ratchet where you find, oh, if I show more hardship in my life and I
mhm.
expose that, become more vulnerable, be more dramatic, that leads to higher value of entertainment. That's or
So
not
now
higher
so
value,
now
but
you're creating
it's
you're
why does
exaggerating
reality
problems.
TV work?
Mhm. And I think that was the she did it for about 4 years, and I absolutely recommend people listen. Like you should. It's a really great podcast. But that's the conclusion she came towards at the end, at least from the way I understood it in her interview, that it started to feel like she's using her family as commodity
Mm.
for like when an issue happens, or like this is gold, like this
Right,
is.
right, right. Wait, before this fight, 1 minute, mom. Let me record this. Get really angry again.
But it's like you said, so now the what quote unquote whining is kind of a commodity, so you try to find reasons to whine, right?
Right, because then you realize that the more that you do that, the more drama that you have, the better your viewership goes. So then
Hmm.
you're focusing on that, and next thing you know, that you're finding a problem behind every corner, and everything's always so hard.
But at the same time, no
But
one
at the
wants
same
to
time,
listen to
a story isn't a story without conflict.
absolutely.
And in every story, there's always that internal, and we talked about this.
Yeah,
Every story on the episode that we did together a long time ago, a
yeah.
year ago now.
Mm.
Um, there's always that internal conflict, and that's where I need to I working that out. And I haven't figured that out, but I'm trying to work that out of how can I, Malcolm Gladwell says that anytime someone is sharing a story about themselves, it's always susceptible to suspicion. It's like, well, what makes your story so great that you think that you should share from your life experience or your story? Like, why? And so I've taken that and I think it's true. So I'm in that place where I realize, okay, I need to be more transparent and more vulnerable to connect with an audience, with the people that I seek to talk with and serve on a deeper level, because I believe that is so important. And
Right,
because I don't want it to be an us and them. It's
right.
a we. I'm in this with you, even if from a place of leadership, I wanna lead from behind, if you know that
Hmm.
that phrase.
Hmm.
Right? I don't want to lead from the front. I want to lead from behind.
Hmm.
Um, but so then the other side of that vulnerability is, okay, well, how can I tell stories about other people so that it's not wrapped up in my vanity?
Hmm. Right. Um,
And that's a challenge. It's
it
challenging to
is.
storytell that way.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm very good at it.
You doing an episode every single day, I'm sure you'll figure it out sooner
Right. And,
than
and that's
later.
so yeah, that's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I need to figure it out.
Right.
I need to, like, I'm at the stage now, as I said, like, I'm looking, okay, how can I refine? I've been thinking this last 2, 3 weeks, like, okay, should I take a pause and take 2 weeks to kind of refine the show? But then
Hmm.
I don't want to do that because I'm like, well, I feel like, I'm 13 weeks into it. I'm
Hmm.
finally I feel like I'm building momentum in some ways. So why would I want to stop my momentum
What
now?
momentum? In what sense? Are you talking about audience, or are you talking about
Both, maybe.
yourself?
I feel like audience in some ways. I feel like myself momentum.
Hmm.
Just having that streak,
Right.
right? Just having the confidence that comes with, like, well, I've done how many? That's 60, 70 episodes almost, 5 days a week,
Bro, I'm exhausted just hearing that,
right?
man.
But in the beginning, I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to say next week, right? I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm going to say next.
But now,
But now I'm like, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say next week.
hmm,
But I'm like, but I have the confidence, like, well, I figured out the last 70. I'm sure I can figure out something else to say tomorrow.
yeah. Where do you feel like the skill that you've gained from doing these daily episodes has translated in other areas in your life in any way?
I don't think I've been doing it long enough.
13 weeks, you said?
Yeah, 13, I mean, that's nothing.
Right. It could be, the 13 weeks could be
So,
something.
so this is what I think. I think in that 13 weeks, right, that's 70 episodes, I've probably learned in 13 weeks what most people learn in a year.
Right. So okay. Then that leads me to another question. How much, and if you don't mind me asking, we don't have to add anything if you don't mind. How much time are you giving to the other parts of your life, considering how much you're doing? Because it blows me away how much you're doing, right? But it
I
also
think,
gets me
but it
wondering.
looks, so this is the thing. It looks like I'm doing more than I am,
Okay.
right? So I'll sit down, I'll have a notebook, and for an episode, I'll take one sheet of paper, like a small journal paper,
Mm.
not an A4, and I'll have my theme, and I'll write down my bullet points. It'll take me 30 minutes maybe to pre-produce the show. I'll turn on the camera. I'll sit down, start to finish, 10 minutes. It's done. It's already on the computer. I already have the preset. Click master.
Wow.
It bounces it. I sync it with the video, bounce that, and it's done.
Right.
So it's not taking that much time to actually produce. So if I was a writer, and I am a writer, if I was doing, how about to say, if I was writing, it would be the same as my discipline of sitting down and writing every day. Instead, it's the discipline of sitting down and putting those thoughts together in thought form and then presenting it every day.
Right. So we're talking earlier about you trying to find a way to display more vulnerability. And perhaps doing an episode like this where the roles are switched could be a way towards that. So I would like to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I feel like, looking from the outside, I mean, we're friends, but we're not like close friends. I don't know a lot of the ins and outs.
You never text me back.
Bro, I always text you back. I always text you back. What is the biggest challenge you're facing right now, considering how much you're putting out? And you say it's 30 minutes that it takes
An hour.
But
an hour.
An hour per episode, right?
Yeah.
Aside from the other work that you're doing, and
It's only an hour. How much time do people spend watching TV? I don't watch TV.
okay,
I don't watch TV.
Mhm.
I don't have time for that. Just don't watch TV. You just gained an hour and a half. Don't binge. Like, my wife and I watch one movie a week, maybe two if we do like 2 days on the weekend.
Okay.
And recently it's been, scroll. There's nothing. Let's go to bed.
I could suggest a few things.
Well, yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, you, like, if you are working a 40-hour, let's say you're working a 50-hour work week, or you have 168 hours in your week, you're sleeping for about 70 hours in your week. So you have 100 hours to play with in your week, 100 hours in a week. Let's say you're working 50 hours a week. Okay, so you have 50 hours. What are you going to do with that 50 hours?
Right. There's family.
Okay.
There's like grocery and like house chores and like running errands.
Yeah, that does not take 50 hours in a week.
Right. You still have some left.
So let's say, which I don't think it's true, let's say all that stuff takes another 30 hours.
So you got 20 left.
You have 20 hours in a week.
It's decent.
What are you doing with it? Cut out TV out of that 30 hours, and now you're at 25 hours in a week. What do you, like, that's your destiny. Like, we're totally fine with wasting 15 minutes scrolling through Instagram.
Right.
Are you fine with squandering your destiny? Are you fine? Are you, if I said, hey Abdullah, do you want to squander your destiny today?
No. Right.
Okay. Well, if you squander that 15 minutes, you actually squandered 15 minutes of your destiny. Right. Your time is your destiny. I am compelled to not squander my destiny, thus not squander my time. Thus, mindless binge watching on Netflix isn't a priority in my life. So I make it not a priority in my life. And I choose not to do those things. And now, boof, 25 hours in my week. What am I going to do? What can I create?
Right.
What can I build? What contribution can I make to the world with that 25 hours in my week?
During this journey, there are
looks like to me I should be putting out 25 episodes rather than 5. So imagine the inefficiencies that are in my life.
Right, but we're not robots, you know. Like there are days when you're sad. There are days when you're tired. There are days. How do
And
you?
that's where I'd say, are you a professional or are you an amateur?
Right.
Because do you go to work when you're sad?
Yeah.
I go to work when I'm sad too.
Right. But
Right?
when it comes
and
to,
I show up to my art when I'm sad because
Right.
I'm not showing up based on my, and this is a great book, the art of the war of art, not the art of war, which is the famous book, but the war of art, the war of the resistance within that keeps us from creating our art. And that is exactly what you're pointing to and exactly what you're talking to is like, well,
Right.
when you feel sad, it's like, well,
Boo-hoo.
you know, put your emotions aside and do your work. Because the thing,
Right.
I'm not saying every day I need to create a hit episode. Every day I need to make sure that it's like totally optimized. It's I'm saying I want to put in the reps because I know that it's in the reps is the refining and the growing and the strengthening. And then when I reflect, then I can have something that I can pivot and edit. But if I am up here all day and I'm not doing the work with my hands, like I've planned, right? I know what I'm doing. It's like 80% there. Okay, now I'm going to work and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to refine. It's like if I told you, okay, Abdullah, get in your car or pretend that you're in your car right now and drive all the way back to Muscat. You could tell me maybe the roads that you need to go on, but you wouldn't be able to simulate with your foot and the brake and the steering wheel how to get there.
Right.
So many people are stuck trying to simulate in their mind, well, how fast do I press the pedal and when do I stop and how far do I turn the steering wheel? It's like, well, you have to get in the car and start driving to figure that out.
And they're like the best critics.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
They're like they got it all figured out until it's time for them to do something.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you have a plan, you have your map. Okay, I know I am in Dubai. I want to get to Muscat. That's good enough. Get in the road and start driving.
Right. So this is what I'm trying to get at, Lucas, which I'm trying to, right? Because I'm trying to see this. I'm not even doing this for the audience.
You're doing it for you.
Yeah, I'm doing it for me.
That's why I talk to people. I'll do it for me.
Yeah, I want to. What is something about you, a quality that you feel like you could improve on? Like, I think I see you the way the audience sees you. You know, but like we're all human. We all have flaws, and we all want to get better. And I want to see that. What is it about you? I want to break through the facade of Lucas Scrobot.
One time someone said to me, all work and no play makes Lucas a dull boy.
Right.
I have a hard time having fun. I have a hard time breaking away and like stopping to have fun with my kids. That, I do that. Like, I'm not like ultra bad. Every day I'm trying to have time with my kids, but I'm not like, hey, where do you want to go out tonight, babe? Let's do something fun. I'm an introvert. I love being in that space of creating and working as a writer, as a creative. But I've had to learn over the years, and I'm still learning, like, what I need to achieve my goals exists in you. What I need to achieve my goals exists out there in the world, and I need to break out of my creation mode, and I need to spend time with people. I need to sit down and have a coffee. I need to network more. I need to shake more hands, laugh more with strangers. Like that's a real issue of me working in solitude, which I love because I'm an introvert, and creating. And so I've chosen to do that rather than to network. But maybe my numbers would grow more if I was more busy
Networking
networking
and
and handing
meeting
out
people.
cards. So
Right.
there's a weak point right there.
Right. But just considering everything you've been saying, it feels like it shouldn't be that difficult for you to overcome that. Or what am I missing?
Yeah, but I mean, but it's probably too. It's. I mean, how much do you spend time hanging out with other people?
Bro, I'm flawed as hell, man.
Right. Well, no. So my point is, for people
Yeah.
like probably people on the other side of the coin would be like, well, that shouldn't be too easy to like break out and like go see
Mm-hmm.
people. Like actually, like ask my wife. Like it is. Like she's like, hey, do you want to go out and do this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like
Mm.
I I love that place of sitting, creating, thinking, reading, exploring. You know, on the Enneagram. I don't know if you've listened to any of the Enneagram stuff or know about the
Listen,
Enneagram.
yeah, to a couple of them.
So I'm a 5 on the Enneagram, which means my vice is the love of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Avarice, the love of
Oh, yeah, I
knowledge.
remember you saying how yours is the best one.
Yeah.
And you were saying it jokingly, but not really.
Exactly. See?
I remember
You
that.
remember.
Yeah.
So like that mine is the love of knowledge. And because of that, I can so easily skew to this place of independence because I don't want to be dependent on other people. And so it's a strength because I'm able to do things without needing other people, but it's a weakness because if I want to do anything significant, I need to do it with other people. I need to build something bigger than me. I need to do it in team. I need to break out of that consumption and gathering and ideating of knowledge and move into execution and or move more into relationship.
Mm.
And more face to face sitting down. Like that's a real area of weakness for
Okay.
me. And you can, my wife would, if she was sitting right here, she'd be like, yeah.
Bro, you're bringing up ideas for like part 2 and part 3, man.
We're here. We're here.
That will be a whole different coming soon.
Coming soon.
Meet
Next time.
Rachel.
Dun dun dun. My wife is incredible. I mean, people ask, well, how do you do it with 4 boys? I'm like, well, I married an incredible woman.
Mm.
Like she's an amazing mom with such a huge capacity. Do I help? Yeah.
And I hear she makes a mean chili.
She makes an incredible chili. She's incredible.
Where is this going, man? What is this all for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wonder that too.
It's really.
No, I mean, if you look up here, this is you want more vulnerability. Donald Miller. Have you heard of Donald Miller?
No.
I'm giving away my greatest secret right now. If you call 1-800-555-secret, I will tell you. No. But really, this if you're listening to this and you're wondering how can I become a better communicator, this is probably one of the greatest secrets that I'm ashamed to give away because it's so brilliant. Donald Miller, who has the company Story Brand, and his motto is "You confuse, you lose. If you confuse, you lose." And he talks all about how to tell a story, how to have your brand tell a story, how there's specific parts of the story. Character has a problem, meets a guide. The company's always the guide. Brilliant. So I've been thinking a lot of what he has been saying. And I look at my positioning, I look at my podcast, I look at what I'm doing, and I'm like, man, if someone asks, well, what do you do?
Mm.
Well, I do a little of this and I kind of do that. And, I have a podcast. Well, what's a podcast about? Well, it's like, it's, right? So right here, I have it right there on the board. You can see it. And I almost erased it because I didn't want you to see it. Right? Because vulnerability, that's a weakness. And as a 5, I don't want to appear vulnerable, right? I want to appear safe. So when people think of Lucas Skrobot or Own the Future or whatever, they think what? What do they think? When people think that thing, my name comes up in their head. I'm trying to work on that.
Right.
I'm trying to refine
when I think
my
Lucas
energy.
Skrobot, I think, what's your purpose?
Right. I'm so glad you said that, because over here I have my 3 triangles and in the middle is actually purpose. So that's where I'm actually going through. So thank you for the confirmation.
Wow.
And
So,
that's true. It's like,
so
okay,
you communicated it very well then.
I have communicated it. I've communicated it well, but I haven't articulated it. Right. So you've gotten that through osmosis over time, which I think that's an encouraging thing. But how does that translate into, well, what's it all for? Well, really, what I need to do is then say, okay, I help brands communicate their purpose. I help brands find their purpose. I help brands communicate purpose internally and then externally. I help brands bring people into that purpose. I help people find and discover their purpose.
Why?
So why? Because that is all for part 1 of 3 with this series with Abdullah Maawali and myself, where Abdullah gets to ask me really hard and pressing questions. Stay tuned for tomorrow, part 2, where Abdullah asks this question.
And they're lost.
100%.
And so when you say follow your destiny or follow, what does that mean?
As always, thank you for listening. I'm Lucas Scrobot, and remember, if you own your story, you will own your future.